Hey everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started for today. And Tom is going to help us out by running through some slides. I want to introduce our speaker today. Many of you all may already know him, so I'm not going, and he knows far more about what he does and his actual qualifications than I do. But what you all may not know is that we were roommates for 2 years in college, and friends for much, much longer than that on both sides. So what I can tell you about Seth is he is just such an altruistic, good person. Despite having the identical skills that a hacker would have, he is a good person. So how my mom would describe his career is that he is a white hat hacker. You know how in Westerns you can tell who's the good guy and who's the bad guy based off of what color hat? So that's a lot like what Seth does. He is a white hat hacker. He does hacking competitions and things like that. And if he is able to successfully find a flaw, you bet his colleagues and he look to solve that problem. So he's going to tell you in a lot more technical language what exactly he does and his qualifications. But I just want to let you know that we are speaking with the expert, and there's no one better out there, not a better person nor hacker out there than Seth Troxler. So we want to give a round of applause for Seth.
Thank you, Kevin. Now I get to try and live up to that. I appreciate it. Hello everybody. My name is Seth. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about some common scams and how to thwart them. It's going to be key. So before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. Next slide, please, Tom. I can just tell you anyway. So my name's Seth Troxler. I work for the State Employees Credit Union currently as a cybersecurity engineer. I wear a few different hats for the credit union, but one of the hats that I wear is a digital fraud hat, or maybe should be called an anti-fraud hat, right? But Kevin is correct in that a lot of my role is to understand how adversaries or scammers, or however you want to call them, we'll call them scammers for this presentation, how they think and what it is that kind of motivates them in order to understand how we can prevent our members and employees and other people from being taken advantage of, right? So my job is to understand how they think so that we can improve the controls around how we protect people. So I'm working for the State Employees Credit Union. Before that, I worked for First Citizens Bank for about 5 years, also in cybersecurity. So I've got about 6-7 years experience in the industry. I'm trying to think of the bullet points that are on my slide. I graduated from NC State in 2017, so I'm an NC State grad. I'm also a proud dog dad, and there are pictures of him later on. We'll give Kevin a second to get this fixed. Thank you, Kevin. Oh, that's what it was. I'm also a former Highland volunteer. So if I look familiar, I spent about 8 years or so working on the streaming ministry, doing the streaming for Highland, both of the connection service and the traditional service. I also spent a fair amount of time as a member of the praise band. So if I look familiar, not quite sure why, that's probably what it was. And the dog you see on the slide is our German Shepherd, Zuko. So he was not able to make it with me today, but he is here in spirit, and you can see he is in his favorite spot in the middle there. I'm in the chair in the background. That's where I do a lot of my work from home, and that is his spot to be waiting on me to be done so we can go play. All right. So the agenda for the day, I'm going to give a little disclaimer just kind of at the start of this, because this can be a little bit of a negative topic. We're going to try and keep it light and informative, but just the nature of it is that people are trying to take advantage of other people, and we got to try and stop them, right? So there's a little bit of a disclaimer. We're going to talk about how to spot a scam, right? So scams can look very different depending on where they're coming from, but there are some common things that we can look at and try and remember in order to catch them or identify them, right? So we'll call those out. We're going to go through 3 examples in detail, and it's a little funny because as I was putting this together, I had more come in. You know how if you buy a car or you're looking at a car, you start seeing it everywhere, right? Or if you're looking for something, you start noticing it all over the place. People have been popping out of the woodwork this week to tell me about stuff that they've had happen to them recently. So I've gotten some good examples. We're going to talk about ways you can protect yourself just in general, some common things that might be helpful for you. And then we're going to talk about what to do if you do fall victim to a scam, right? Because it happens. It happens to everybody. The reason people continue to do this is that it's successful. So, we need to understand what to do if it does happen. And we're going to have some resources to learn more, and then maybe a little recap at the end. And I'll say, if you have questions, kind of as I'm going through these things, as they come up, feel free, just kind of speak up, let me know. And I'll try and pause at the end of each section and ask the group. So, all right. So my disclaimer is that at some point in time, if it hasn't happened already, and I'm sure it has, you will be scammed or frauded or conned in some way or taken advantage of by somebody that you've probably never met and will never see again, right? It's just kind of the nature of the thing that it happens in our society. And when that does happen, it is okay. It happens to everybody. I told you I had some examples from this week. So on Sunday, I had a friend call he was trying to rent an apartment, and the guy that he was supposed to be renting the apartment from, he had all the right information. He had the apartment address and the access code, and he said, you know what, if you can pay today through Zelle, which is maybe a little unusual payment platform, then you can have the key today and you can move in right away. And my friend said, okay, sounds great. The guy had all the information, it checked out, and when he went to make the payment, his bank flagged it as fraud. And so then he got a little suspicious and called the name on the sign, the rental sign out front, and the rental company said, you need to call the police because that guy's not with us, right? So he did, and fortunately, he was able to, he didn't lose any money, right? The transaction was stopped, it was identified, right? But it happens to everybody. This is he's a guy just looking to try and find an apartment. My brother called the other day and was on the phone with somebody that wanted to buy his house right away. And now my brother's a little bit like me. Sometimes we like to go a little farther into these things than we should, but he kept talking to the person on the phone and found out that it wasn't a person. It was a AI. It was just a bot that was holding this conversation with him, like a coherent conversation. So he was calling to tell me about that. So all that to say, this happens to everybody, all ages, all faces. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. It'll happen. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that scams are always changing, right? So what we're going to talk about today are some examples. They may be true today. They may not be true in a couple weeks. They may not be popular in a couple weeks. What we say in cybersecurity is that it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game, right? Like attackers or scammers will find something that works, and then they'll do that for a while. And when people start to catch on and it starts to work, less, they'll stop doing that and they'll find something else, right? So these things are kind of always changing. And what that means for us is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. There's not a silver bullet. If you do this one thing, all your problems are solved, right? That unfortunately doesn't exist. So our job is to then stay informed, right? Kind of stay in the know on what's going on, and then stay vigilant. Make sure that we're paying attention to those phone calls we get, or those text messages, or Facebook messages, whatever the case may be. And the last thing I'll say on this slide is that all the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are my own and do not represent my employer. So just making that clear. All right. So let's talk about how to spot a scam. Now, I will say this is not a system that I came up with. This is, I think that link says FTC. These were taken from the FTC's website. They have some great resources for consumers about how to spot and identify scams or fraud. There's links that we'll share with you guys. But the things that we're going to talk through today, we have 4 things, the 4 Ps. They are pretend, right? Scammers pretend to be from an organization you trust or be someone you trust. Scammers will say there is a problem or a prize, right? So they'll either say, hey, you've won the lottery, or they'll say, you're going to have a collection against your name and you're going to go to jail if you don't pay now, right? So there will either be a problem or a prize. You'll have pressure to act immediately, right? So whatever the solution is, you got to act now. Don't hang up the phone. Don't go do something else and come back to it. We need you to act now. So that's the third one. And then the fourth one is that scammers will ask you to pay in a specific way. And a lot of times that'll be something like through a gift card or through a wire transfer, right, which is something that happens instantaneously and is very difficult to recover, right? Once a wire is gone through, it's really difficult to get the funds back if it's possible at all, right? So 4 Ps: pretend, problem or prize, pressure, and pay. All right.
Question.
Answer. Yes.
I had one for, it was going to be a wire transfer.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess not a wire transfer, it was going to be a Western Union.
Western Union, yep.
Then I asked the people at the grocery store where I was planning on getting it.
Yep.
Well, actually, I got it. And they said, when do they get the money?
Mm-hmm.
He said, when you give them the number.
Yep.
I got back in the car. They called me immediately
Mm-hmm.
in the car. And they wanted to know what the number was.
Yep.
And I said, I'll give you the number if you can spell my name right.
Could they do it?
No,
Not at all.
no, they had to supposedly call the car, this, that, and the
Right.
thing. So, so I talked to them all the way home. I was only about 5 minutes from home.
Yep.
So I talked to them all the way home. I get home, my brother runs down the stairs. Don't give him any money, they're a scam.
Yep.
Because he's a computer person.
Yep.
He knows all these scams too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it was a publisher's clearinghouse.
Yep. Yeah.
They don't call it.
No. Not typically, right?
They advertise that they don't call.
Oh, well, there you go.
They want to see, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't entered in publisher's clearinghouse in years.
Right.
And so I was just really
Yeah.
wondering why I'm called.
So they had the 4 Ps, though, right? They had the pretend to be Publishers Clearinghouse. You've won a prize.
He said, trust me, I'm a Christian.
Yeah. Yeah. There's your credentials. Yeah. So there's a lot of those, and we'll talk about. So lottery scams is one of the things that I'll bring up and mention.
I finally told them to, they said, well, you want us to give the card to somebody else? I said, because I told them, I said, if you give the card to somebody else, I'm going to sue you because you said I want the card.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things. But then they, at the end, they said, you want us to give it to somebody else? I said, go ahead.
Yeah. Have at it. Right.
Have at it.
Yeah. That's a good story, and thank you for the Western Union tip. That's one of those specific ways that's maybe a little unusual, right, that you would look to pay somebody. Yep. So, exactly. And you're good. All right. So, phishing, smishing, and vishing, oh my. I did not make these words up, I promise. So phishing, I think, if your term sounds familiar, phishing just refers to like a fake email or web page that you would see. So you might get an email. It's probably difficult to see on the screen, but on the left, there's like a PayPal email. It's got the PayPal header and the logo, and it says, response required. Please reply immediately or whatever, right? So there's that pressure aspect again. Smishing is the same thing, but in a text message, right? Or a Facebook message, any type of messaging app. And the example on the screen there is it says NC SECU alert, right? Did you spend $500 at Food Lion? If not, click this link, right? So again, you've got the pretend, you've got the problem, which is that somebody has charged your card for this amount, and then you've got the pressure to go and deal with that immediately. And what the link would do, and I don't have pictures for this, but what the link would do is take you to a page that probably looks like the credit union login page, or whatever your bank is, right? Whatever they're advertising for. And you would put in your credentials, and you would probably be logged in. but they would have stolen those in the background, right? So that's kind of, if you've ever wondered what happens when you click that link and you haven't done it, that's basically what it is. You get taken to a login page, you would put your credentials in, and then they would be kind of swept away in the background, right? And phishing, the last one on the screen, is really just good old-fashioned phone call scams, right? And that's a image from my voicemail that I got that was a debt relief scam, right? People just call and they'll leave their message, leave their blurb, say, hey, please call me back as soon as you get this. I'm going to help you with whatever the problem is that you have, right? So that's kind of the three methods that people will contact you through, right? It'll either be an email or a text message or a phone call, generally what we see. So, all right. So this is going to be the first example that we go through, and this is, we're going to talk about gift card scams. And these really ramped up in the past year and a half, I would say, from what just anecdotal experience. But the example that we have up here is actually from my phone. So this is a text conversation that I had in September of last year. So I had been with the credit union for about 4 months, right? And we had had a change in leadership. So there was a new CEO at the time, and he had been there for about a year. And this kind of creates an opportunity for people to take advantage of, right? Anytime there's a change or a transition in leadership like that, because it's not just the CEO, right? It was a new CEO, but also some new executives and just some new faces in general to the organization that might not be as well connected. That's an opportunity to try and exploit people's willingness to help, their desire to kind of, be helpful to leaders and, prove themselves or, what have you, right? So anytime there's a change in organization, it kind of sets the scenario here. So we'll go through this, and I'll read it. I know you probably can't read it on the screen, but it says, "Hi, Seth," which is not my name. I will point that out. "Text me back if you got this message, thanks, Jim Hayes." Jim Hayes was the name of the CEO. And I said, "Hey, Jim, what can I do for you?" And it said, "I'm on a conference call right now, and I need you for a quick task. Are you available?" Right? Now, that message right away is already kind of setting off a spidey sense, right? So a quick task is relatively generic, and it's not how I would typically expect somebody to speak, right, or to send me a text message. So the use of the language is a little weird. But I'll roll with it just because I want to see where this goes. And I said, "I'm also on a call. What do you need?" Because I was working. I'm busy. CEO, whoever. He said, "Okay, I'm planning to surprise some of the staff with cards, and I want this to be confidential." Right? So don't tell anybody. Don't say anything. Don't ask anybody about this. It's confidential. "Could you please confirm if you can purchase Amazon gift cards from the nearest store?" And again, there's the language piece. The nearest store is not a phrase I would expect somebody to say in this case. I would expect, "Hey, could you go buy these gift cards for the staff?" Right? And leave it at that. Trust me to figure out where it's at. And so I'm like, okay, I think this has probably gone far enough. So I replied and I said, I can do that for you, but this sounds like a scam. Can you put pineapple in your reply? And that is where the conversation ended. So I want to recap here and go back to the 4 Ps. So we have somebody who's pretending to be my CEO. He's pretending to be Jim Hayes, which is somebody that I would report to, right, that would have authority to tell me to go do, whatever for the company. So we've got that pretend. There's a problem, sort of, that he's engaged on something else and needs me to do something confidential. And the people who would normally do it, which would be his staff, are who it's for, so he doesn't want to tell them, right? So there's the problem. And the pressure is to go and presumably do this today. And I think if I had gone a little farther in the conversation, we would have gotten to the point. And I know from other gift card scams, the payment comes in, you would go and pick up the cards, and then you would typically scratch off like the pen on the back and then take a picture and send it to the number. Or you might get a phone call and like read the number off to whoever it is, right? Instead of delivering them in person, which is kind of what I would expect to do if I was buying gift cards for the staff. So that would be the next sort of tell in that last P around payment. Yep. Yes. Yeah, it is very, in my experience, it is very unusual to be asked to go buy a gift card, right? Just the scenario as a whole is probably good cause for some suspicion, right? And that kind of plays into the what do you do, right? So if you get one of these messages, some of this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I would like to ask if they can wait an hour, right? Is this something that has to be done today? Can this wait? And what you'll get back is, normally like, no, like it needs to be done right away. It's kind of urgent, and that adds to that pressure that we want to look for to know, like, I don't really think you need it right away. Something else you can do is confirm with the individual that you're supposedly talking to through a known phone number or known contact method, right? And this is true for a lot of some of the other examples as well. But if there's a way that you can verify that information outside of the text message or a Facebook message that you received from an unknown number or a lookalike account or something, you want to go ahead and do that, especially if it's involving any sum of money, right? Everybody probably has their own threshold for what that is, but you'll typically see increments of like $500, right? So if you're being asked for a $500 gift card, it's probably worth verifying with the person, just as like a double check. Like, you really wanted this, right? And this is the gift card. Next thing I would say is let other people know, because you probably aren't the only person that's been targeted, right? So I was saying this kind of followed the credit union because of the organizational change that happened, and I know some other people got similar messages, and they saw the same problem. So odds are, if you're getting this message and it's from maybe the Highland staff, right, supposedly, other people in the community probably are too. So it would be beneficial to go ahead and raise some awareness and let people know. That way, when that message comes to somebody else, they're kind of prepped and thinking like, oh, hey, wait a minute. I heard this from Kevin or Tom or Bill or whoever, and they said that was a scam, right? So that probably makes sense. One of the things that I found as I was researching on this is if you do go for this scam and you end up losing the value of the gift card or whatever, turns out you can ask for it back from the retailer that you purchased the card from. I want to say it was the FTC's website or FCC's website, one of the two. They had recommended that as a step. There are some retailers that are willing to accept that as a fraud loss. So, it's not a guarantee, but it probably can't hurt to ask, right? And the last thing to do is to go ahead and report this to the FTC. Now, there's not necessarily a lot that can be done, but on the off chance that there is, I like to go ahead and report, the phone number and a, short summary of, this phone number asked for a gift card, and if they gave you any other details, you could share those as well, right? So I'll pause there for a second. Any other questions or comments on gift card scams? Yes?
On that same one
Mm-hmm.
I had before,
Yep.
they wanted me to have a card or just get the thing for $300.
Yep.
And after I came out of the first grocery store, because we had decided that it's a scam, but I said, if this is a scam, I can't lose $300.
Right.
I'll give you $50. And he said, well, the lowest I can go.
Yeah, you're haggling at that point, right?
Yeah. He said, the lowest I can go is $100.
Okay.
So I said, okay, but I went and got one for $50. And then I called, when I got it, I called the company right away.
Right.
And then I told them I asked them about when you can get them, get the money. I mean, when do they get the money?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I haggled them down to $50, so,
There you go.
that's, if I lost it.
It's loss mitigation right there, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah. It is. Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question.
Sure.
The behind the
Okay.
And using the example that you gave about the change at
Yep.
your company with
Mhm.
the administration coming in. So how do people, like, how would they know that? Like, there's got to be
Oh, that's a great question.
a pretty big network behind, because how would they know that and then to get your cell number and?
Yep. That's a great question. So the question was, how do the people that are running these scams know, right? How do they find this information out? My guess, the primary method is LinkedIn. They would watch for announcements of CEO changes. They could watch for when people are leaving a job or starting a new job, right? And keep in mind, this was about a year after that CEO had started, and it was about 4 months after I had started. So for a CEO or somebody in a high-ranking position, there's normally a press release, right? There's normally a lot of publicity around the fact that, hey, we're having this change in leadership. If it's a public company, there would be a stockholder meeting, right? There's a lot of publicized information about that change and when it's happening. And so just from that alone, you can kind of think, this is an opportunity for fraud to come in or for a scam to come in. And as far as getting my phone number specifically, because they did have 3/4 of my name right, I would still go probably LinkedIn or some other online service that has my cell phone number, because I'm sure I know there are plenty, right? Finding a phone number and tying it to an individual is unfortunately pretty straightforward to do. Yep. Yep.
So then there would be like a dedicated group of people watching on. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's both crazy and not as crazy as you think, right? If you think about it as like, this is not like a sole person or an individual that's texting me. This is a group of people, right? And so there may be 3 or 4 people in this group whose job it is to read the news and watch which companies are making what changes when, right? And then it may be another person's job to go on LinkedIn and scrape as much data or they can, or to obtain that data illegally, right? Like I use LinkedIn because it's an easy legal example of where I might could go collect that same information. But there are certainly places to buy that info that are not above board. So.
Sounds much more well organized than I thought.
Yes, and I'll get a little more into that on a couple of these. So, go ahead, John.
One of the more interesting, convoluted varieties of this kind of gift card scam was I got a telephone call from Best Buy.
Okay.
Did you just order or buy a washer and dryer for $600 in New York City?
Okay.
Well, no, I did not. Oh, well, listen, we want to catch this crook.
Yep.
The way we'll do it is you go get gift cards, and when they go try to cash those gift cards, we'll get them.
Okay.
No.
Not how that works. That is an interesting method, though, right? Because it's, hey, here's a problem. Oh, it's a scam. Let us help you with that. It's kind of like, jumping the gun there. So that's interesting. One more real quick.
Hello, Grandma.
Yes. So grandparent scams are 3 slides down. So we'll get to those in a second. All right. So let's talk about tech support real quick. I get these a lot. I don't know if it's because I work in IT or just because they're really common. Has anybody gotten a call from Microsoft or Apple or Google? I know we've heard Best Buy. And they want to fix a problem with your computer, right? So again, this is a little tongue-in-cheek, but I can almost guarantee that Microsoft, Google, Apple, whoever, is probably not going to initiate contact with you. They're not going to call you to say you have a problem. Now, if you called them and entered like a callback, wait queue, then they'll call you, right? But for the most part, they're not going to reach out first. They're trying to cut those call center costs as much as possible, so it's not in their best interest. But you'll have these tech support scammers who are more or less in a call center, right? It goes back to the organization thing. They'll have a group organized, and if you ever get on the phone with them, you'll be able to hear other people in the background running scams on other unsuspecting victims, right? It'll sound normal, but that's generally what's happening. So going back to our 4 Ps, we have people who are pretending to be one of these big name companies that everybody knows and everybody has a device from in some form or fashion. They say there is a problem with your device, right? And if you engage them, so short story, I was at my parents' house and waiting for something, so I had time to kill. And I answered one of these phone calls and then went and sat down at my parents' computer and went through the steps and got on a video call with these people and opened up a screen share, and they showed me the red errors that you see over here. This screen looks very scary, right? As an IT person, I can tell you, these are really nothing to worry about, right? There's a term we use called FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, doubt, right? Scammers will try and spread FUD. They'll try and spread fear and that uncertainty and convince you to take that action, right? So they're pretending to be Microsoft. The problem is these errors on my computer, and the pressure is that they can fix it now and it'll be a discounted price, right? 80% off, only $287. To which to finish the story, I told the guy, I was like, look, I work in IT. Like, I know what you're doing here. Can you just explain to me kind of your rationale? Like, what's going on over there? Can you just explain it to me? And what I got was an earful of some language that I cannot repeat anywhere ever in my life. Really, the guy went on for about 15 minutes, and it made me think, and this is speculation, this is not like a confirmed Seth fact, but I think that they are probably judged based on the same metrics that a normal call center would be, which is who hangs up the phone, who terminates the call. So this guy would rather spend 15, 20 minutes berating me for wasting his time, which there's some irony there, than he would to hang up the phone. So I eventually hung up because I had to be somewhere and didn't have time to spend on it anymore. But it was an interesting interaction, right? Now, that said, don't try this at home. Don't feel like you need to go talk to these people. If you want to see more of that, there is actually a whole YouTube genre that is devoted to people who are scamming scammers, right? So their goal is to just waste their time, make them mad, convince them to stop doing what they're doing. So that's a thing, if it's interesting to you. So there you go. And what follows is what to do about these. So there we go. So if you get a call from tech support, best thing to do would be to independently verify who it is that's calling you. And all the companies that would call you will have a contact line you could call to say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I have one of your products. I received a call saying that there was a problem with the product, and they will more than likely tell you that it was a scam call, right? But that independent verification piece is pretty much key for all of these, right? The second thing you can do, and I think most of us probably take this approach, is just hang up. Just, refuse to engage. I know if you have an Apple device, there is a feature, or an Apple phone, there is a feature that silences unknown callers. I have found that very effective at cutting down the number of interruptions in my day, because if there's an unknown number, it just doesn't ring. It goes to voicemail, they can leave me a message, I can call them back at my discretion. It saves the whole answer, understand that it's a scam, and hang up process. On Android phones, I think there's a similar call screening feature that you can use that will send them to like a Google Assistant. And that can be helpful for taking the pressure off of you, right? Like if you get into these conversations and then get flustered or feel pressured, that's something that you can kind of remove yourself with, is that call screening feature. So there's that. My next tip for tech support scams is just only use authorized retailers and people, right? If you have a problem with the device or a problem with the computer, probably the best thing to do, if you know someone who is technically savvy and could spend the time to fix it, maybe see if they're available, or take it to somebody local, right? A person or a shop that can analyze your problem and fix it for you, right? So if you do go down the path and if you do install software from one of these groups, there's a chance that it's relatively harmless, but most of the time it's going to be malicious software, and they'll scam you in two ways, right? So you'll have paid for the software in some form or fashion, and then that software will begin stealing information from your device. So when you go to a bank login or any type of government web pages, so I know the Social Security Administration, anything along those lines, these programs are configured to pay attention to that and to steal that information, right? So if you go through the process and install a piece of software, treat the device as compromised, right? This device is no longer safe to use. It's no longer something you should use for sensitive transactions. And then take it to the nearest retailer and have them take a look at it, right? If you have a backup of your phone or device, you can probably pretty safely restore from that backup. But I might still take it somewhere to just have them independently verify that you're not at risk, right? And the last thing on these is just, again, reporting to the FTC. Yeah, go ahead, John.
If you have time and you want to have a little fun with some of these characters,
Mm-hmm.
the one that I had the most fun with was a call supposedly from the IRS.
Yep.
And that I owed $10,000 that had to be paid immediately. And so I said to the person on the phone, I said, "Oh, I'm so glad you called. I've been worried about that. I thought it was more like 25,000, and I was just so fearful. I'm just so relieved to know it's only 10,000. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad. How do we get that resolved?"
Yep.
"Well, you just give me your bank account number, and we'll resolve it right now." And I said, "Well, listen, I don't have my checkbook handy. Would you just hold on while I go and get it?"
Yeah, there you go.
I put the phone down and walked away.
Yep. And that is a great way to waste their time and prevent them from scamming other people, because while they're waiting on you, nobody else is being affected, right? And I'll tell you, so it's funny. Like I do enjoy messing with people a little bit. You have to laugh about it when you can. But we would get calls for alarm systems, people that want to come install an alarm system in your home. And my brother, I think, had the best response. And he would say, "Oh, that's great. Who makes that alarm system again? Okay. Can you tell me what model chip they use in there? I just got out of jail for breaking and entering, and I'd really like to not get caught again. If you could come give me a demo," and then they'll hang up. Like, it's pretty effective and can be a lot of fun. So, all right. So, moving on, this will be our last kind of in-depth example. We're going to talk a little bit about grandparent scams. And I call it grandparent scams because that's the term that I've heard and has been used kind of in the industry and when I look for these online. But funnily enough, I was in the car this morning listening to a podcast that I normally listen to that's security related, and they were talking about basically this scam. I didn't look for it. It just happened to be the one that was next on the list. So the way this typically goes is you will get a phone call, right, from either a relative or somebody that says they are with a relative, typically a grandchild, but could be a cousin or, niece, nephew, whoever. And they'll say, "Oh, there's been a terrible accident," or "Oh, so-and-so's in jail." A lot of times you'll hear they were traveling in a foreign country, right? So there'll be some scenario there. So you've got that pretend aspect, right? We're pretending to be the relative or somebody with the relative. There will often be an ask not to tell anybody. "I'm embarrassed about this. Don't tell my parents. It'll give them a heart attack," right? Please don't tell anybody. I'm calling you specifically because I trust you, and I trust you to be discreet, right? So there's that pressure, the pressure to not tell anybody, right? And the problem being that, somebody's arrested. There's normally a handoff in this phone call to a lawyer, in quotes, a lawyer, or, third party, somebody with a different voice that can say, "Yep, I'm so-and-so. I need you to tell me that that Jim's a good guy, and he would never do anything wrong in his life. Oh, and if you could give us, $1,600 for bribe money to bribe the police and get him out, that'd be great," right? And one of the things that I read, I don't have an example of this, but one of the things that I saw is that we're at the point now where some groups will even put together a short voice sample that was AI generated that sounds like someone or a relative. And I can tell you from experience, the only thing you need to do that is a long enough clip of somebody speaking in public, right? And it doesn't have to be hours and hours and hours. It could be a short 40-minute presentation. So if anybody wants to sample my voice after this, just send me a copy. I'm curious to hear what it sounds like. But if you're on the phone with somebody, right, and they're supposedly in a jail or not a great area, right, the audio quality is not going to be great, so you may be more willing to look over some of the imperfections or things that don't sound quite right. So it's a pretty good strategy, and it's pretty convincing. And this is a tough one because some of the other ones play on, like a prize of like, oh, you've won a bunch of money, it's going to solve a problem, or oh, I can help you get out of debt, maybe. And this is like a relationship-driven scam, right? So it tends to hit people a little harder when that comes in. So the other thing that I'll say from the example that I read this morning, I didn't have a chance to practice this, but going back to the notion of scamming being kind of opportunity-driven, of people being opportunistic, the podcast I was listening to this morning gave the same scenario, right? There was an arrest, there's a lawyer, I need you to bail me out. But it was specific to a region in the Middle East where there's a region that is split between two states, and there's a shared language but some rivalry between the states, and a lot of the families have relatives that live abroad. So let's say, oh, this is so-and-so, your cousin, I'm in Canada, right? And that's a perfectly believable story. It's, everybody's like, yeah, sure, I have a cousin, whoever, that lives in Canada. That makes sense. And so it adds to that. So that region in particular is being targeted with this same thing because those conditions exist, right? So what can we do about it? It's a tough one. The first piece of advice that I'll say is don't offer any information to the caller. Some of the examples I looked through, the first line would be, hey, grandma, grandpa, uncle, do you know who this is? Right? And then you would respond with, yeah, this is Jim. Good to hear from you. And what that does is that gives the person a name to agree to, right? They are now Jim for the duration of the call. If you had said Drew, they would be Drew. But it kind of gives them that. So you might say, nope, sorry, I can't quite hear you. Who's calling me? As part of that. And the second piece is to verify the story. And I know I've said this for all of these, but that independent verification really is key. If you're on the phone with this person and you feel that you can't hang up, right, which is often the case if they're calling from a jail in another country, how are you going to get back in touch with them? Borrow somebody else's phone, right? Find a way, grab a laptop that has, you can get on Facebook and message somebody, send an email, do whatever you can do to verify the story, right? Say, I hear you, I really want to help you, but I just got to double check. And if they give you the, don't tell anybody, I'll be embarrassed spiel, then all you would have to do is say, well, I don't need to tell them the exact story, but I do want to check and see if you're in this country at this time, right? Or if anybody's heard from you in the last 8 hours. Because if they have, that doesn't match up with, the arrest story, then you can kind of catch them in a lie, right? So there's that. You could also potentially ask the caller to confirm a detail that only an actual family member or friend would know. That can get a little tricky depending on what it is that you want to ask, but I do know that some people have set up phrases that they'll use to say, if I'm in trouble, use this phrase, right? Like kind of straight out of a spy movie. This is the code phrase, right? If I really need you to send me bail money in Spain, this is what I'm going to say. The hills are red today, or whatever it is, right? Make something up. But that would be another way that you could kind of verify. And I'll also say this bullet isn't on here, but I would strongly advocate that if you or family are planning travel out of the country, that you kind of look into these sorts of scams and maybe think about how you could prepare for them ahead of time, right? Or prepare the people who aren't traveling with you ahead of time to say that, hey, I'm going to be gone, let's go ahead and kind of talk through this, right? I think I would also plug, if you can, maybe not advertising that trip on social media, right? Going back to kind of where people get this information from, right? Facebook is very informative, Instagram is very informative, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. There's so many platforms nowadays that people use, and they can all be kind of followed to see like, oh, here's a college student that's doing a study abroad. They're going to leave on this date. They're going to get back on this date. Like, I know the program. That's my window, right? So next bullet on here, please don't wire money send to Western Union, or give card details without any sort of confirmation, right? Like I said, towards the start of this, most of these payment methods are going to be immediate and non-refundable. So it's very difficult to get money back if it is sent. And then the last thing I'll say on this is, again, just report to the FTC. You know, as much as you can. Tell other people, hey, I got this scam. You know, you may want to be on the lookout the next couple weeks or days or whatever. So yeah, any questions on that particular style of incident?
My grandson called me.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of sounded like,
Yep.
now I asked him, you know, I said, oh, you got a pass? He said, yeah. And I talked to him a little bit. And then after he told me all the stuff that I needed to do,
Mm-hmm.
I immediately called his mother.
Yep.
And he was there in Ohio.
Okay.
He wasn't in Maryland
Well.
by accident.
There you go. Yeah, that verification thing, it shuts a lot of this down real quick.
And what I use now, I use RoboKiller.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem is that I've got a lot of companies that I'm dealing with that have, you know, different people have different phones.
Right.
I don't have, and I try to tag them all in this one, you know, that this is a good number.
Yep.
But the, you know, I'm still getting stuff that, I've got an Apple,
Yep.
and I didn't realize that
Silence unknown callers.
they do that.
Yep.
Because I have been getting some of those, I thought that was the RoboKiller doing that. But if I find out that these are these companies or these phones are dangerous,
Yep.
then I block the call.
Yep.
I just go to it and block it.
Yep. And that'll work too. The problem with blocking things like kind of one by one, right, is that they're just going to keep coming back for a different number.
Well, they're going to do another number.
Right.
Yeah, but
And I've had people call me and tell me that somebody's using my number for a scam, which is really interesting to hear, but unfortunately there's not a lot you can do about that.
yeah.
So it's a known problem that we're struggling with.
So RoboCaller is good because it's cut down a lot of them,
Yep.
but I have to make sure that I tag a number when I find out
Right. There's a step from
something
you.
that I actually need.
Right. Yep. You've got to clear people to come through.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that can be tedious, and you can miss stuff, and it's it's a little bit of a burden. Yep. Yep. Go ahead, John.
You talked about the telephone scam where you think that Microsoft or Apple is calling.
Yes.
At Springmore, where we live,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of a group of people that helps folks with their computers and their phones. And I probably get at least one call a week that somebody has on their screen an email, presumably from Microsoft or Apple,
Right.
that their computer is infected with the same idea, the phone number to call.
Yep.
And also the false purchase thing that thank you for your $500 geek subscription,
Right.
etc. And if you call this PayPal number, you can delete it. Well, of course, this is not a PayPal number.
Right. Yeah. The number's not legit.
What the PayPal number actually is,
Yep.
you can see it's a phony number.
Yep. Yeah. And the email. That's a good point about the emails, right? But it's the same. It's the same pattern, right? So it's somebody pretending to be somebody you know. There's a problem with your computer. Please act now, and you'll get a discount, right? It'll only cost you a couple $100 instead of more. So, yeah.
I occasionally get a call, supposedly from my grandson.
Yep.
Grandma. Well, I don't think we have a line up to heaven on my grandson.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll get, so I don't have any children or grandchildren yet. We'll get there. But I will get text messages that are addressed to someone else. It's the person that had the phone number before me. And the message will start with, "Hi, Misty. I am looking to buy houses in your area, right? And it's something that I can't tell you how to recreate, but it is a convenient way to know. So there are sometimes some of those obvious tells. Time check real quick. Oh, we're good. So I'm not going to go through more of these in detail. I'm just going to say there is a large variety of these scams. They have all shapes and sizes, all forms and fashions. There's one for each and every one of us. There's, they're widely varied. They appeal to both problems that you may be having or the potential of a prize or lottery scam. Oh, that was the other thing. I had a guy my brother works with. His mother had passed away, and they found out when they were settling her estate that she had lost all of her liquid assets in a lottery scam. And she never told anybody. She didn't reach out for help. They didn't know until after she had passed that these people had been saying, oh, well, send us a couple $1,000 and we'll get you your payment. Oh, well, there was a problem. Send us $3,000 and we'll get you your payment. And so little by little, they could just see the deposits leave the accounts. And it's sad. It's really sad. But that's why I'm here talking about this, is so that it's something to be thinking about, it's something you're aware of, and something to be on the lookout for as you go. And I occasionally get a chuckle out of Dilbert. So you'll see why phishing scams keep working, and you see the first guy go, that's a scam, and the second person goes, that's a scam. And the boss is like, oh, that sounds good. So the reason people keep doing this is that it works, and the way that we combat it, like I said, is to talk about it and think through it and be prepared. So let's go to the next slide, please. I think we'll have some things of how to protect yourself. And I've probably spoken to most of these at this point. So be skeptical but verify. In the security industry, we say trust but verify. So I believe you, I trust you, but I'm still going to check your story out. I'm still going to confirm that this is legitimate in whatever way that I can, right? I mentioned blocking unwanted calls and text messages or using a screening service on your device if you have that. Don't give out personal or financial information to a request you didn't expect, right? If somebody is calling you out of the blue looking for something, it's probably a good indication that it's going to be a little bit of a scam. Go ahead.
I got a call from the VA, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was, they wanted to know, he had been in the VA.
Yep.
And they wanted to, they wanted to know this and this and this, and I was giving them the information.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I asked what section of the VA, what section of the
Right.
service they were in, gave me really, I gave them this information. Wait a minute. I told them he was in the Air Force. They thought he was in the Army.
Oh,
And so she says, I can't talk to you anymore.
interesting. Okay.
And so it turns out that evidently he was listed as in the Army.
Yep.
Because I went to the VA and they said, well, this says that he's in the Army.
Yeah, their records had it as Army.
Yes.
Mhm.
I said, no, he was always in the Air Force. Always. That's
Right.
the only thing he ever talked about
Right.
to me. And so I think we got to straighten that with them.
Right.
And then too, I had my nephew
Mm-hmm.
was in the worked in the White House
Yeah.
with the VA
Yep.
and Medicare. And so I could find out from him.
Right.
At that time, I could find
So you have a source of information.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be helpful. It's probably not something everybody has access to, but it is, if you have a source of information, that's good. And that feeling that you get when you're like, wait a minute, have I said too much, right? And that's what I mean when I say, don't hand out that information to a call that you receive. A lot of times there is, and a lot of times you'll be asked to do this, but there's going to be a way for you to get back in touch with that person, and they'll say, hey, either go to this website and look at the number for the contact, and then here's the extension that you dial to get back to me, right? There's a way for you to call back in that you can independently verify through some other means to say, I'm willing to continue the conversation, but I want to call you through a legit number, rather than having them reach out to you. So that's an option. Well, I would hang up and do it, but that's fair. So there's that. I would also say resist the pressure to act immediately. Going back to one of the P's is pressure. A lot of times you're going to get this urge, this push, like you're on a deadline. We've only got 15 minutes. Act now. And people that say that you've only got 15 minutes, they'll stay on the phone for hours. Fun fact. If you just drag them along, they'll stay there forever. But resist the pressure to act immediately. If it is a supposedly emergency situation, I like to think about it like this, right? If there's been an accident and somebody needs medical assistance, they don't need me to pay for it, right? They're going to get the care up front, and then we will settle the bill after the fact, right? So trying to keep things like that in mind can kind of help fight some of that pressure that you might be feeling.
And also, they told me not to, when my grandson was in problem,
Mhm.
supposedly, they said not to call anybody. And it didn't sound like him because
Right.
he would have called his mother.
Yeah, it would have gone there first.
Yes.
Yeah. So that confidentiality is a common ask. They don't want you to reach out, but my ask is that you do. Call somebody you know or trust and just kind of verify. Know how scammers tell you to pay. I think we covered this too. We talked about wires, Western Union, gift cards, things that sound a little unusual, right? If they don't accept check or Visa
Crypto.
or cash, like for me, that's maybe a follow-up question, right? Of like, what kind of organization is this? So there's that. And then the last thing, I just said it, but stop and talk to somebody you trust, right? If you have a friend or a family member or a neighbor, really anybody, and that can just kind of bounce that idea off of to say, hey, I got this call or I got this text message. Does this seem legit to you? I think it's a scam, and you might save yourself that way. So, and then next we'll talk about what to do if scammed, right? And going back to the idea of communication, let people know, right? It may be a little embarrassing, but you don't have to tell them all the details. Just say, hey, I got this call. Be on the lookout. You can also report it to the FTC or FCC. There's a couple different places. Most financial institutions have a fraud department, and they are keen to hear from you if you get a scam message purporting to be from them, right? We have a process at the credit union. We have one at First Citizens Bank. I know all the other financial institutions that we work with do too, to take down phishing pages. So if there's a link to a login page that looks like us, we have a process we can have that taken down and taken care of. But the number one way that we get notified is by people reporting it, right? So please report it. If you do give out account information, freeze the affected account, right? Call your credit card company, call your bank, say, hey, I'm concerned about this account. They will put a note on the file, and they will lock it down to where you no funds can move until you notify them further, right? And then there's an example at the bottom. So a lot of financial institutions on their webpage, they will have some similar security tips or what to do or a fraud number to call. My recommendation would be maybe jot that down or add it to your phone as a contact. So if you need it on short notice, you don't have to go look for it. You can just have it at the ready, right? Go ahead, Tom.
Seth, we'd like to pay you in cryptocurrency for this presentation today, but we need to verify your banking information first.
I don't have any Bitcoin, and I will not be gaining any today. That's not my thing. These are just some of the resources and the links that I pull information from this presentation. A lot of them are from the FCC or the FTC, those .gov websites. They have some great info. We will find a way to get these distributed for you to consume at your own convenience. And I think that should be about it. There may be a recap at the end, but I think we've covered most of it. So I will say I appreciate your time this afternoon. It was really enjoyable to put this together and be able to come present it for you. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm happy to take more questions or share more stories, but that's all that I have for the presentation. Yes, I will work on the dog pictures, absolutely. He has his own Instagram account, so there's plenty of them out there.
Thank you so much, Seth. I just want to take a minute or two and tell you all some ways that we've seen this here at Highland. Me as the music minister, I've gotten a number of emails from people wanting to give away their really good baby grand piano because they were recently widowed, and their husband never went professional but almost did. They want to give it away for free. And your defenses start to lower because you're like, okay, they're not asking for bank account info or anything like that. But then all of a sudden they're like, ooh, it's now on the moving truck, and you can call them the moving company directly, and then all of a sudden they add that pressure on you, one of the 4 Ps, and they just give you some sort of urgency, and you've already let your guard down. We've had some other things, and this is going to happen, like Seth said, cat and mouse situation. We, as a church, want to be public about our identities. You can go on our website and find out who the senior pastor is. And it takes almost no effort at all to make a Google, a Gmail account that says johnhighland@gmail.com. And you can look at the email and think, oh yeah, that sounds about right, even though it's not. That's not his real email. And you can look that online. This is being recorded, so I don't want to say too much. And anytime that you put your email on any of our websites or newsletters, maybe you want to contact, Amy or Corinne or something like that, and they put their email in the newsletter, scammers are able to go through and just kind of search for any sort of email in any document. So we've been very intentional about only putting staff emails on our website, and that's for that reason. Because many of you, there was one person here who came to church with a few $100s in Amazon gift cards, ready to give them to John. There was someone else here at this church who tried falling for the Microsoft scam. Microsoft was calling them. Thankfully, she wasn't very good with computers. She didn't know what a cursor was, so she wasn't able to help them too much. So thankfully, she didn't help. That's one way to defend yourself, too. But I promise you, we as a staff and clergy, we are really good about asking for money from the pulpit and through mailing, okay? We will ask you for money personally and not through text or email. So if you ever receive any sort of email from us asking for money, you can pretty much ignore that. If we're asking you to join the choir, that is a great thing to consider. But we're not going to ask for money through email, certainly not any sort of payment thing like that. So thank you so much. Can we give Seth another round of applause? Joanne, is there anything else?
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Wonderful.
There are still leftovers. We'll get some takeout trays. Please take home what is left.
No, I don't need that anymore. Okay. I think it's got a little liquid in it. Be careful.